Welcome back to another episode of the Collaborative IEP podcast. I'm Ashley Barlow, your host, and I am so happy you are here. Whew, baby, we are back. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. This is the second week of January when this goes out, and I thought we would start with a little bit of a life lately, and then this episode really seriously goes back to our roots, and I'm going to tell you why. In the meantime, if you're watching on YouTube, yes, indeed, I am having a hot flash. So, and I am so intolerant. I think this might be relatable. I think you might be like, yes, I agree. I am so intolerant of them. I don't know how people suffer through or why you would choose to with like trying to not let other people know. I gotta use a fan. I gotta shed layers. And so there's no shame in this game. I hide. And it makes me kind of incorrigible. So, yeah, I could have hit stop and waited for this to pass, but why would I want to spare you from it when you're experiencing it too? Okay. Also, while we're talking about that, yeah, we finally got my background quote unquote fixed. We're still surrounded by cookbooks. I don't know. Here's what happened. We did this right before the holidays. When I sold my office building, I moved home. We put most of you have been around here since then. We switched rooms in our office. So where I'm currently sitting was my home office. It is again. And someplace else in the house over yonder was the TV room. And I have to have doors that lock and, certain things in order to protect confidentiality. And also this room's kind of central in the house. And I thought, gosh, with babysitters and whatnot, I don't really want to be like in Grand Central Station. And then circumstances changed. And as you probably know, I now do most of Jack's after school and or summer supports. And so I don't really need to be in this private place. And we figured out a way to put the private, like to keep a desk in the TV room which, like, where I can work when I need confidentiality and where I can lock stuff up and that kind of thing, and also have a bigger TV room. So we're back in this room, not that you care, but if you're like me, when you watch things, you get distracted by stuff. Like I used to get so distracted by my teachers, like this little bit of gray that is on my hair. I would be like, why didn't she highlight that? And I would just focus on that forever or like a lint ball on somebody's thing. It's obvious I have ADHD and I didn't know it. So, yes, we took down the TV holding support that is behind me. But the funny thing is the TV covered that. And so that little spot is not wallpapered. So let's set a timer and see how long it takes me to go dig out that wallpaper and the supplies and actually climb up there and stick a thing of wallpaper up there. I'm guessing it'll take me months, but we'll see. So now 3 minutes, and we are still talking about that. I thought I would give you a little like holiday update. This is you guys are our most engaged and kind of intimate group outside of the membership. And so I thought I would, kind of give you a little update. So we had a nice holiday season. We like all the normal stuff, right? So my family has a lot of traditions that start on the 23rd, parties and get-togethers and things that we have to do, food that we have to eat, all the things. And that was lovely. We started a new tradition. Well, we reinvigorated a new tradition a, a year ago, wherein we get together with my dad's extended family again, and I host that. So we had that on the 20th, and then on the 23rd we go to a couple of things, and then on Christmas Eve, my cousin and I alternate hosting. And so I hosted this year my mom's extended family. And then on Christmas morning, my parents come over for a little bit, and then my in-laws come over for a little bit. And so over the course of 5 days, we had 92 guests in our house. And plus or minus. You know how I always count after a party, like, how many people was that? So that's a lot. That's a whole lot. And it was fun and it was great. It was great to be together and celebrate all the kids' accomplishments and hear all the fun stories and do all the fun gift exchanges and all that stuff. But uh, I'm telling you now, my house still is not recovered. Like just yesterday, I found a little piece of Christmas that same thing. Gosh, how long is it going to take me to like put that in a baggie, take it down to the basement, unlock the storage room door because Jack loves it. So it's locked. Open the bin, put it away. Like, that task will take me 2.5 minutes, but I am guaranteeing you that it will not be done until April or, like, maybe the next time I have a babysitter that has to stay overnight and I do, like, a rash cleaning. Anyway, I loathe those kinds of little easy tasks. So that was great. But the thing I wanted to talk to you about with Christmas was I had more conversations this year with you all and with friends in the disability community than I think I've ever had about how hard it is. I don't know if people are more honest because of all the other stuff that's going on in the world or because we all have teenagers now, like the people in my inner circle for the most part, or what. But like just the simple question of, oh, hey, happy holidays. I hope you had a great Christmas or I hope your week's going great. People would respond and be like, it's fine. It's hard. And so whether I was at yoga or on the phone or by text or showing up for a consultation with a client, excuse me, I was hearing kind of the same thread of like, this is hard. And so if you don't have that community, I just thought I would show up for you and say, it's hard. Jack had 0 social things. He had none. In addition to that, we had one "Can your family go to dinner?" invitation suggestion where we felt like he could be successful. He's had, like, a really kinda crappy end of 2025, and so he's very dysregulated, and I do think that's improving, by the way. But we had one situation where we were like, yeah, that seems like people that'll slow down enough to include him, an environment where he will feel good, food that he will like that won't cause something else, right? Like there's a restaurant that serves milkshakes and he like cannot leave that restaurant if he doesn't get a milkshake. And it wasn't there. So that's hard, right? Like so he was off of school for 16 days or something like that. And we had one family dinner invite where we thought it was like reasonable and that he would be set up for success. And he did have swim practice, but he didn't have it the first week. So he had 2 swim practices in 16 or 17 days or whatever it is, and he had nothing else. Like, oh, we did meet one friend for coffee one time, and it was not a success. I think he felt very uncomfortable, just his body he was very dysregulated, it was very busy and a multitude of other factors. And this is me, right? Like, I'm very proactive. I am very involved in his day-to-day support. Uh, I generally know what he needs, and I just didn't get ahead of it. Like, no fault to me, but, like, it really caught me off guard. And so what ended up happening was I was saying it to somebody's grandma the other day. I was like, "So if you're awake for 16 hours, there's 32." Jack's attention span's about a half an hour. There's 32 time periods that we had to fill. And even, like, dinner time, when you're in these unstructured periods of time, even dinner time then becomes like a Jack, sit down and eat. Jack, you have to eat your broccoli. Yes, you can have ice cream after dinner. But then, like, even ice cream after dinner, he got in this habit over Christmas of waking up and getting the ice cream out of the freezer while we were, like, brushing our teeth and getting our day going, and because he's the first one up in our house, and so then I would be like, "Sure, you can have ice cream after dinner," like, we give him a little bit of almond milk ice cream after dinner, it's just a nice incentive, and he would have eaten it, because of the lack of structure, and so I know that the facts and circumstances are different in your house, and if you cruised through the unstructured holiday break, amazing, but if you didn't, um, maybe knowing some of the ins and outs of things that happened at our house will help you realize that it happens to the best of us. It happens to the mediocre of us like me. It happens to all of us, and we're in it together, and I know next year I will be more proactive about setting up family nights that are set up for him. Like, he loves game nights, so we can do that with other families, and I've got all kinds of other ideas of things that I can do to fill in those 32 half-hour stints in order to make him successful and to give him something that's, like, fruitful, because I look at the kind of unspoken thing here is you don't compare your kids, right? But I know the experiences that Griffin had over his break, and Griffin was going to lunch with friends. Griffin was practicing twice a day. He was going out at night. He has a girlfriend. He, has jobs so that he can pay to go out by himself and all of those things. And then you kind of, like, match that up with Jack being like, "Are you leaving again?" And it's hard, and Griffin does an awesome job of being present for Jack when he's here. There's no slight on Griffin, I'm just saying, like, Griffin had all these experiences, and I'm sure that that really was also obvious to Jack. So, all of that to say, you're not alone, and I think that's a really important reason that we have community here. Over in the membership, I talked a little bit more about Jack's experience at school and kind of like in the fall and the things that of course, I only share enough to make him with what I'm comfortable about telling about him, but his experiences are universal, right? And I gathered good community. I felt nourished by the response that I got. It's a community that I try to foster, right? And I benefited from it by sharing a little bit about that over there. So I hope that me sharing this with you gives you a little bit of that sense of like I'm not as isolated. I'm not in this by myself. So, okay. So today on the podcast, what I really want to do is I kind of want to go back to our bones. And where this is coming from is we did just revitalize and relaunch our community over at the Collaborative IEP. And in doing so, I have like that revitalization and planning for that made it like kind of obvious, kind of easy for me to plan a book. So yes, in 2026, I am committed to writing a book. Yesterday, I had this like kind of freak out about like, I haven't thought about how long it takes to lay it out and how long, like what the graphics look like and all of that stuff. So I'm going to write a book. And I was like, hang on a second, be reasonable. I'm going to write a book in 2026 and it might not be to you until later. I don't know because I haven't looked at that part of it. I'm like very much of a, oh, I'm going to do this. And then we just figure it out as we go. I definitely build planes as I fly them. But in doing that, what I have done is I have gone back through all of the resources that I have made for you. I have gone back through all of my Canva slides. So all of my PowerPoints, which come from webinars that we have done for you and various initiatives. A couple of years in a row, I did a New Year's challenge and I went back through all of those slides and I've gone through all of the resources that are in the membership, the checklists, guides, tutorials, the digital courses. Something that I'm going to add in there is I've got a digital course on estate planning for parents, and then I've got one estate planning for people with disabilities. and that, it has to do with supported decision making and guardianship and all of those things. And so I've gone through all of those. And then simultaneously, I have been looking for more opportunities to speak again. Our research is telling us that we want to, I think like social research is telling us in this industry that people are wanting to be together more. And so, like we have come down, I like the idea of human geography, right? Like, where did we land after the pandemic? And we have landed in a place where we I'm distracted because I'm so excited. I thought that the clock was rolling up on 2 o'clock, which I was like, man, where did the time go today? I don't have any meetings today, but it just rolled up on 12 o'clock. It's just noon. I'm so happy. Okay. So, anyway, I have this is what happens in my brain. So, being together. So I used to speak a lot. I used to travel to Down syndrome affiliates, autism affiliates. I did NDSC at National Down Syndrome Congress. Used to do some of these, like they call them grassroots or no rural, like rural advocacy conferences. And I spoke at a couple of those, and I loved it. I love being around people. I love learning from you. I love helping you with my skill set, etc. And so I've been looking at opportunities to speak, and I went to a little thing actually yesterday on kind of creating like your signature talk, right? And that helped me to reflect on uh, something that I want to do here, which is go back to our basics and really kind of come back to this like skill set of advocating for our kids in a way that is easy for the parent. Okay. So without divulging too much, because it's not fair to any of the people, most importantly, Jack, we have had, and I've said it this way before here on the podcast and on social media, we've had a really hard start to high school. And what has been like really like apparent, really just slapping me in the face, like, "Hey, you big dummy," is this is super hard to DIY. Advocating for your kid is super hard to do yourself. Yet, very many of us are in a position for lots of reasons where we don't want to or cannot hire an attorney or advocate. And I'm going to even add in, it's not in anybody's best interest for us to hire an attorney or advocate for a multitude of reasons. And I could give you 100 reasons. Like literally, I could start right now and list 100 different reasons. And so I started this business, Ashley Barlow Company, turned to the Collaborative IEP in order to help you advocate for your child with or without an attorney or advocate. And that will always remain our mission. But something that I've committed myself to is giving you more of the like, okay, what do I say? If they say this, what do I say? If they do this, what skills do I need? How do I prepare? Like the actual nitty gritty, now what do I do situation? Because this is my job, and it's hard for me to do for my own kid. It's hard for me to even write about and on behalf of my own kid. And so this epiphany that hit me yesterday was way back when we had Ray Nelson on the podcast. He's speaking at the conference this year, and he's amazing. He is one of my favorite advocates in the country. I met him at a rights law conference many, many years ago. The conference doesn't even exist anymore, and he's just great. And Ray and I were talking on this podcast about how I don't know, like somehow he and I were talking about how like parents need to know special education law, and parents also need to know special education practice, right? So we have to know enough about executive functioning or the science of reading or sensory processing disorder or fill in the blank in order to be able to help our kids. And Ray was like, and Ashley, we need to know that the negotiation and advocacy strategy to get the kid what they need, what teaching practices they need under the shadow of the law. And I was like, Eureka, you're right. And so since then, for the last 4 or 5 years, that's what I've taught is you need these 3 strategies to be able to successfully advocate for your child. You need number 1, special education law. You have to know the law. It's unfortunate. I'm sorry that you do. We're going to circle back to it. Number 2, you have to know teaching practices or enough about the impact of your child's disability and what they need in order to support them and teach them. And then number 3, you have to know those negotiation and advocacy strategies. And I think that the trouble at DIYing this is we aren't experts at any of those things. And so we have a hard time communicating about them because we might have done all the research, but then we have to retain it. And then we have to be able to articulate it at the IEP table and in emails. And when we see the principal at the convenience store in a way that is effective, but it's not rote because what's rote to you is accounting or massage therapy or dusting your baseboards effectively and not special education, advocacy, sensory processing, dyslexia strategies, fill in the blank, right? Like we are all experts in a multitude of things. I'm an expert in Debbie Gibson's discography, and I could talk to the principal about that when I pump gas, but I can't talk like boom about trauma informed care in my case, right? So what I am committing to is in things that I do in the future to giving you like not only the practical thing, but giving you like, because the practicality is, well, you need to learn sensory processing. Okay, cool. But if you learn sensory processing, you and I both know that 10 things down the line is going to be, well, now we've got a sensory stuff figured out, but anxiety just really took over our lives. So now I got to learn everything about anxiety, which by the way, little side note, I think that's such a blessing. If we take this as a framework shift for just a second and we say, this is giving us the opportunity to continue to learn, like, man, nothing's going to get stagnant here at my house. Nothing at all. And how lucky are we to have this community and to learn from our kids? It really just is a blessing. And that's like a major framework shift, and I totally get it, and I am Pollyanna, but if you're intentional about that and you look for the good, you're gonna find it, and you're gonna be so enriched. So, okay, so let's kinda take this one by one and just a little bit of a deeper dive. Okay, I should mention, though, this is funny. I just, like, took a second of a break because I needed to get a new bottle of water, and in doing so, I walked through the kitchen and realized I left out the cheddar cheese that I sprinkled on top of my lunch soup, and I literally just opened a bag of cheddar cheese and drank it. So, if you are feeling like you don't have it all together and the rest of the world does, know that there's somebody out there that drinks cheddar cheese as they're walking through their kitchen. Okay, so special education law. I am really sorry to be the bearer of bad and objective and reasonable news. But we unfortunately, as parents in special education, have to know the laws. You've heard me say before that we have to proceed under the shadow of the law, right? So a law casts a shadow. If you're going to hold up an umbrella at noon in any part of our world, the sun is going to cast a shadow, and that shadow is going to kind of go from your right arm to your left arm, right? Around in a circle. And within that shadow is where any decision maker, administrative law judge, district court judge, OCR decision maker, any of those people that's where they're going to land. So, the law is based on reason, facts and circumstances come in, and the trier of the fact, the judge type person, is going to look at those facts, and because no two facts are the same, no two schools, no two kids, no two anything is the same, and they're going to make a decision, and it's going to fall somewhere in this like gray area. If we could just put our finger on, oh, that's right or that's wrong, then attorneys wouldn't have jobs. We wouldn't have these due process rights. We wouldn't have the ability to file complaints in various places like the OCR and our state departments of ed and, you know, various other district courts, etc. But we do because no two schools, no two circumstances, no two kids are the same. So I don't wanna just stop there, though. That's what I've said 1,000 times in the past, and kind of in this new epiphany that I've had, what I want for you to be able to do is I want for you to be able to find the law as it applies to you and as it applies to your kid. And so I wanna tell you about the OSEP and OSERS guidance letters and dear colleague guidance documents and dear colleague letters. So if you go to the United States Department of Education website, you can type into a search bar, or you can just type into the search bar on Google OSERS, Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services, and OSEP, Office of Special Education Programs, guidance documents. That will lead you to documents which then you can search, and you can search them by topic. So if you've got an inclusion thing, you can type in inclusion, least restrictive environment, and it's going to pull up every single one of those suckers that's available online. And then you can read those. What those are is that is the Department of Ed's interpretation of the laws. So, no, you do not have to go in and read the laws. You can if you want, but you can go to these documents which explain them. And in the case of Dear Colleague letters, somebody has written them and said, hey, in my district or with my client or with my child or with me, we have run into this circumstance. Can you help me interpret it? Well, that can really help you because it can compare the facts of the case to something else. So if you are trying to DIY this and you are trying to figure out the law and the regulations that tease out the law, I think that's an excellent place for you to start. You also can go to lots and lots of different books. Of course, Pete Wright, WRIGHT, has written a few books about the law. One of them literally has the law printed in it, and then it's got like an explanation of the law, which I reviewed and edited alongside many other smarter and more capable people. But I get a little shout out in that I think it's the fifth edition of that book. And there are textbooks, there are lots of books that explain special education law. So I think that's another good place to go. But what I want for you to know is you don't have to just read the law. Okay. And I would definitely start at either the Department of Ed and those guidance documents or a rights law document. Worth noting also, rightslaw.com, WRIGHTS law.com has a really nice search feature as well. Okay, so number two, you have to know special education. You also have to know special education practice. Now, I am going to tell you something that you're going to be like, oh, no way, I can't believe she said it. So you can use AI to get started here. And I do it all the time. I do it. I look for a curriculum like to get me started on ChatGPT probably 4 times a week. Do I trust it like exclusively? Absolutely not. And I think the secret is you've got to put in good prompts. So here's what you have to do. You have to know whenever somebody says, I think your child is or might be struggling with X, you need to get very, very competent in X, right? So if somebody says, I think your child might be struggling with sensory processing disorder, I think it is completely reasonable for you to go over to ChatGPT or Gemini or whoever and say, somebody just said that my child struggles with sensory processing disorder. Here's what I know. What do I need to know? Can you give me a brief tutorial that I can read in 5 minutes about sensory processing disorder? I think that'll get you someplace to get started. You might say, are there any books that you would suggest to help me learn more? Or is there any professional on the internet that could teach me about this? Now, if it's sensory processing disorder, I would say I would prefer that this person is an occupational therapist, right? Because those are the people that are trained to talk to us about sensory processing disorder. Um, and then you take that kind of brainstorm and you go look for information that speaks to you and that sounds like information that came from an expert, right? So here's what I want for you to know. I go to the doctor, I get a diagnosis. I ask a lot of questions of the doctor, and then I say, "Okay, write it down for me," and then I come home, and what do? Of course, I type it into the internet. I have anxiety, right? I type it into the internet and I look. Now, I'm not gonna go to the, like, super duper rote information. It's probably this, it could be that, and, like, take you down this, like, rabbit hole of and you might have to have 15 surgeries to be cured of your, you know, uh, scratch on your arm, right? Because I have anxiety and I have to have those boundaries. I personally, uh, my interest and values, everybody's are different, but my interests, values, and experiences will probably lead me to a resource that is more holistic and natural and approach first. And so, what I'm going to go read is probably more holistic and natural in approach, at least from the outset. Yours is going to be different. And that's the whole point is you explore whatever teaching practices are going to be appropriate for your child. It is I still didn't take off my reactions on YouTube. I or whatever this is, Tella. I actually kind of like them now. So you got a thumbs up. It is important that you do that within your interest and values. So it'll help you retain it and it'll help make sure that it's right. So, first go get competent in the thing. Sensory processing disorder, dyslexia, whatever it is, right? We could go on and on about all the different diagnoses or academic impacts. Then you need to know, how does this thing impact my kid? What does dyslexia look like in my kid? What does sensory processing disorder look like in my kid? If I could tell you the one thing, the one conversation that I start with parents as an attorney that and advocate that is the most impactful, it is, how's your kids fill in the blank executive functioning? How's your kids emotional regulation? How's your kids sensory processing? How's their reading? Right? Because the parents are going to answer it. Most parents can answer that. But then I say, what executive functions do they struggle with the most? Where are their relative strengths and weaknesses? And they can't answer. So then I have to go through a list of executive functions. What's their organization look like? What's their prioritization look like? What's their task management look like? And do we struggle within task management with task initiation, task maintenance, or task completion the most? And we go through it like that. And then we really get good information. So becoming competent in those things and then applying it to our child, right? And then from there, kind of step 3 under this teaching practices is then looking to say, are there curricula or programs or teaching strategies, et cetera, that will help my child to learn the skills necessary to make progress in this area of development? Number 1. And number 2, how do we support them? So what accommodations and modifications do they need until they master emotional regulation or reading at grade level or whatever, right? So we kind of stair step this one. We become competent in the diagnosis or the struggle. And then we say, what's that look like in my kid? And then we say, what teaching practices will help my kid move forward? Okay. So, and I would definitely get started on that on the internet. Just asking broad questions, looking at them critically, and then going into resources that are trustworthy and aligned with your interest and values. All right. And then number three is the advocacy and negotiation strategy that you need in order to get your kid from point A to point B. Now, I would say a large majority of you that are here are like, yes, that's where I really struggle. Like, I know the thing. I go to all the therapy appointments. I talk to all the people. I create the social stories. I take them to tutoring. I work with them on their reading. You know, I can co regulate like the best of them, blah, blah, blah. I know that most of you are really good at that. And I think those of you that are like, but I really struggle in the moment to advocate for them. And like before we start, there is like a big bow to you, connected. Yes, sister, I agree. I do this for a living. Not only do I advocate for a living, but I literally mediate for a living, bring people together. And I am telling you, it is hard. It is cuss word hard. So I completely, completely agree. But it's very important and it's very worth it. And we're in it together. So this is where I'm committed to giving you kind of the epiphany I had is I need to give you more language. I will tell you, the guru products have scripts in them. Most of the guru products have 2 pages of script, depending on the topic. So I have gotten better about that over the years, but I am committed to getting even better about it. But here's what I can say in this episode. I think it's really important if you're in that phase that you become a student of negotiation strategy and that you really in the meetings kind of approach this like an athlete where you say the hard work's done. I now need to concentrate on the way I communicate. I don't need to concentrate on the law or the teaching strategy because I know the law, I know the teaching strategy. And in these conversations, where I need to focus is on how I'm communicating and kind of like the give and take of negotiation and advocacy. So that guru product on negotiation, advocacy, and compromise, I think is a wonderful place to start. And 19 bucks online, you can't beat the price. Uh, and that could really kind of get you started. Also, a couple of books. My entire negotiation workshop is based on Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Uh, how to, let me go get the other 2 books. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, and Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. So I think those are 3 really, really important books that are, I think all 3 of them are told kind of with fables, which really kind of help you just like connect the dots, right? There's also that Fisher and Yuri book, Getting to Yes, which a lot of you have probably read for work. So I think the negotiation and mediation advocacy strategy is the place where you can concentrate in the meetings because you've done the work on the other 2 categories. And so we're going to focus there for a little bit here at the Collaborative IEP, particularly on the podcast, because I think that's going to be really helpful. So those are the 3 skills that I think you need in order to be effective advocates in a very chill, easy, chatty way as we do it here on the podcast. What's in stake at stake? What is up? I lost all my words. What is coming here in early 2026 is we have the conference coming up February 18th and 19th. And so here on the podcast, I will be having some of our conference speakers, as I always do. And we've got the relaunch of the membership. If you are interested in community and a boatload of resources and special education advocacy, the community is right for you. The book is underway. My little fingers are a typing. And then also, I'm looking at hopefully, probably, maybe, fingers crossed. I have to, fun fact about me, I have really little hands and I have to cross my fingers. I cannot do it. So I have to use my other hands to cross my fingers. Hopefully, I am putting together an in person 2-day conference in Cincinnati this spring or summer. Yay. So stay tuned. We got a big year ahead. Happy New Year to you. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week, same time, same place.